Welcome, everybody, to Write Out Loud, the podcast that you've grown to love about storytelling and authorship and writing and creative arts and all that good stuff. And today, what if I told you that the ending doesn't matter? Like, you already know they're going to end up together in a romance. You already know the ship sinks in Titanic. You already know Elizabeth and Darcy figure it out in Pride and Prejudice. And yet, we lean forward anyway. So is mystery actually dead, or have we just misunderstood what mystery really is? Well, again, welcome back to Write Out Loud, where we break down the stories behind the stories. Of course, I'm Matt, and with me, as always, is the effervescent, insightful, quick-witted, joyful, brilliant Christina, who may or may not argue that spoilers have officially ruined storytelling.
Just because I don't want, well, now, see, I am a Libra. So sometimes I like spoilers and sometimes I don't.
There must be balance to the universe.
There must be balance. If I ask for spoilers, I want them. If I say, don't spoil it for me, then I don't. Yeah, I think, honest to God, it does depend. Just as an example, and of course, this book is all controversial now, but I read it day one when it came out, and so nobody knew what the book was about. And I went into it totally blind, and I think if you go into it blind, you have a different experience with it than, now when everybody knows exactly what it is. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover.
Okay.
I had no idea it wasn't necessarily a romance. It had a different meaning, and actually we fell in love with the bad guy, if you will, along with the heroine of the story, and we understood where her perspective was coming from. So that one, I would suggest someone going without spoilers because it's a totally different experience, and I think what the author meant for the story to be, I don't think it was meant to be any sort of love story. It was a love story to her mother, who was an abused woman.
Sure.
So that's different. And something like the Titanic, that's interesting too. I know spoilers, so I'm watching Titanic and I know the characters that are going to die, and I know the characters that are going to be on the ship's home, and I know one of the characters, God, and I can't remember what it was, name, that ends up testifying at the trials and everything, and like the owner of the ships or the White Star Line. I don't know.
Sure.
But Kate and Leo's characters, we have no idea.
Right.
We have no idea what's going to happen to them. So, yeah, going to be an interesting discussion here.
Yeah. And I think when we think about the overarching theme of this, right, we're thinking around mystery. And what does that really mean? Are we talking suspense? Yeah. Are we talking whodunit kind of mystery? Or are we talking about inevitable outcomes? And I think that's the one we're leaning towards, is more the inevitable outcome of a romance is they're going to get together. It's just the journey we don't know, right? What things are wrong with them? What kind of baggage did they bring into the relationship? What, how do they really fight through some of those things? And what are some of the things that they have to sacrifice along the way in order to make things work out to the end that we know is coming, right?
Yeah.
I feel the same kind of way around superhero movies. I mean, at the end, it's probably going to be the superheroes triumphant in the end, right?
Yep. Again, Captain America is going to win out the day.
How are you going to get there? That's the fun part. But I also think about historical movies. We think about movies, again, kind of like Titanic is one, because even though it was a fictionalization of that event.
Yeah.
But, you think about Civil War movies. We know how it ends. We know what the outcome is. So why are we, what are we actually invested in that story?
Yeah. And I think the common thread is, I mean, if you look at all of that you just named, Captain America, Titanic, Civil War, it's about the characters. It's about the characters. What do they learn? What kind of journey are they taking you on? So thinking in terms of something like the Civil War, a writer creatively could decide, okay, I'm going to take this one character and we're going to insert them into this real historical event, even though this character is fictional.
Mm-hmm.
But what you do with that character is ultimately what makes the story great. Puts someone either on the edge of their seat, looking to see what happens. Does this one survive or not? Thinking in terms of historical aspects, just this past weekend on 60 Minutes, there was this really fantastic story about three babies that were survivors of the Holocaust. And essentially, they were born at the very, very end when all of the Nazis were basically, for lack of a better way of explaining it, getting rid of the evidence.
Sure.
And the idea that these three babies, I mean, I was on the edge of my seat, even though the three were being interviewed, and I know clearly they lived well into their 80s. It was still edge of your seat because every single moment from the time that their mothers became pregnant, whether they started it in a camp or not, at some point they were in a camp. And then the story progresses and they're all on this death train, the last train to the last standing camp where they were killing everyone, killing the evidence. And what happens is they get off the train, and what had happened in all of the previous days is they were all sent straight to the gas chamber. But the day before they arrived, the gas ran out. So, I mean,
wild.
just the idea of all of the happening. So it is really central to the people you put in the story rather than what the ending is. So if the ending is known, whether that's romance, whether that's your historical events, the comic book heroes, we know what the ending is going to be, either because we know the genre, romance, going to be a happy ending. Comic book heroes, he's going to save the day. She's going to save the day.
Sure.
Historical facts, we can look it up to see what happens. But what it is the journey of the central characters. And like I said, like I started with the Civil War, you can really pick out someone, and make it a great story by being very careful about who you're creating. So maybe it's somebody from the South who got wrapped up in this. And I mean, you can continue the story, and where do they grow? Where do they go from, okay, I'm a Confederate, and how do I stay the hero of the story? I mean, there's so many ways that you can, just like James Cameron did with Titanic. He created this mythology around this blue diamond. And was Jack a good guy, or wasn't he? Or she lives, he dies. There's the door controversy. But at the end of the day, James Cameron was able to do with these two characters is take you through all of the historical events with accuracy. So you're learning something, but also the growth of Rose's character. She went from the spoiled rich girl to someone who, and if the pictures can be believed, someone who lived a very full life and set out to do all the things that she and Jack talked about doing. So yeah, you can create a lot.
Yeah, and I do think that it leaves a very vast canyon of storytelling possibility, right, in between that beginning and the end of that story, because, again, yes, the inevitable outcome, but what does that look like? And from a creative standpoint, a storyteller standpoint, you have so much room for wiggle in between there, right? Like you could, I mean, think about even stories like, it's very Civil War related, but Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like being able to this is obviously that is fictionalized, but it's set in this historical era, and that is true to life, and how it's all going to work out, but yet you've now given him this fantastic new role to play. And I think there's so much you can do with stories like that, but it is about the journey, the growth, the plot itself, not necessarily the outcome of the story. And then really what drives the characters through that. What do they want? What is What is it that they specifically want as an individual, not just the fact that they're there, like in this, let's say in the Civil War, they're on the side of the South, right? So they want to keep things as it is. That's what the South wants, but what does this character want? Maybe they just want to win someone's hand, they want someone's hand in marriage or something, along the way. Who knows? But there's so much in there that you can play with as a creative and as an artist that it's pretty intriguing and inspiring.
Yeah. And I also think that as a writer, it gives you the framework. So a romance, it gives you the framework. Okay, I have two characters that I need to get together by the end. There's your framework. Comic book heroes. Okay, there is going to be a conflict that this superhero and whatever gifts, abilities they have has to do with how that outcome is reached.
Sure.
Creating historical characters. Okay, you have the framework of history. And what do you want to do with these people? What do you want to take your audience through? It's interesting because whenever a client doesn't know where they want to go with the story, you start with the feeling. How do you want your audience to feel? What do you want your audience to learn? So once you get into that sort of thing and you've got the framework, you've basically got your outline.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We actually saw Anne Juliet, the stage musical this weekend.
The musical?
And, it's a different twist, of course, on what would happen if Juliet did not die and chose to live and kind of went on, what would happen to her afterwards. Again, that also gives you a chance to say, like, you have this inevitable ending, but there's also this launching point now that you could say, what if we rewrite that a little bit, right? Maybe it's not inevitable. But at any rate, so interesting that we kind of explore here that it's not so much about maybe even spoilers. It's not so much about the inevitability of what's going to happen. It is really truly the craft and the power of that narrative, the emotion that gets into it. So like you said, what do you want your audience to feel? So I think in some ways, like the inevitability of it, I love that you said framework because it takes a lot of pressure off of the artist to have to come up with those two kind of like signposts, right? Like this is, here's where I'm starting, here's where I'm ending. Okay, now how do I want to get there? And what kind of fun do we have along the way? It's super interesting.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, if you really look at anything that is truly great, the well-written stuff, the stuff that gets the Emmys and the Oscars and the, other stuff, you can really get down to the nuts and bolts of it, is that it is a hero's journey. And the inevitable at the end, whether they live or whether they die, or, I mean, if we're looking at the construct of creativity, it's still about the character and how they get there rather than where they end up. So even in the cases of, I mean, we've been talking about the secure happy ending and the love story that happens, the comic book hero that saves the day, the historical thing that we know where it ends. Regardless of what the ending is, so even in a circumstance of like, okay, Titanic, most are going to die. There are people that live, but where is this character's journey? It doesn't matter whether you know that ending or not. It's still about the journey of the character. And I think that's, for me personally, when I read something or I watch something, I'm not necessarily watching to see what the end is. How does this end? But rather, where is this character going? What are they learning?
Sure.
What is happening and how does that affect me? I think that's why when people are having trouble with their work, I'm working with them, I always go back to, how do you want your audience to feel?
Yeah.
Because it starts with the feeling. We don't watch anything, we don't read anything if we feel nothing.
Yeah.
The stories that we don't connect to the character are the stories that don't make the bestseller list.
Sure.
Their career never really takes off. They don't get the good reviews. In TV shows, they don't get renewed for a second season. Maybe even mid-season, they get canceled.
Mm-hmm.
If we cannot, as an audience, connect to the journey, the character, and what's happening in the present, no matter where it's supposed to end,
yeah,
we're not there.
We're hurting. Yeah, I think there's a big focus too that needs to be placed on what's the cost of that journey to the protagonist or to the maybe even the couple, right? Depending on what you're looking to do. Like really explore that. What is the cost to getting what you want, to getting that ending, to finally being quote unquote maybe happy ever after? What did they lose along the way? I mean, think about, stories like John Wick, the John Wick series. Again, inevitably, he's gonna win. He's gonna be okay at the end, but what the heck has he been through and what has he given up to get there? A lot.
Yes.
So it can be incredibly powerful to really focus on, just that total cost to the individual and to the characters themselves.
And it can start as simple as everybody needs to learn, don't mess with a man. Don't.
Exactly. Exactly. So, maybe mystery was never about who ends up together or what happens in the final act. Maybe it's about how people change. Maybe it's about the cost. Maybe it's about watching two flawed humans stumble towards something better, even when we know they'll get there. We don't rewatch When Harry Met Sally for the surprise. We rewatch it for the journey, the tension, the becoming. So, mystery isn't dead. We just stopped looking in the right place for it. Well, thanks for hanging in with us here for a little bit as we talked about this one. And thanks for listening to Write Out Loud as always. If you enjoyed the conversation, share the episode with somebody who thinks that predictable means boring. And we'll see you next time. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We really hope that you're enjoying every bit of it, but we would love to hear your feedback. Drop us an email either to matt@writeoutloudpod.com or Christina@bookmatchmaker.com. We would love to hear your thoughts. What's working, what's not working, and what do you want to hear more of? Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.